confidence for July hit its lowest level this year, dropping to 99 points. This according to the SACCI Business Confidence Index. Neren Rau, who's CEO of SACCI, joins us in studio now for more details on that report. Thanks so much, Neren, for joining us this afternoon. Well, no one had been expecting anything spectacular. Business confidence for July deteriorating, as I said, to 99, and that from 102.4 in June. It's the lowest level so far this year. Any surprises on your side?
I'm afraid not. It just continues to explain that the BCI is having difficulty with the uncertainty in the markets, both domestically and internationally. The message of the BCI failing to find sustainable momentum based on the fact that none of the improvements that we see are sustained into the future. They're generally sporadic improvements. If one looks at the key components of the BCI that we believe would contribute to recovery, manufacturing, exports and imports, one would find that on the manufacturing side, very much a neutral figure this time round, coming off negative on a year-on-year basis. On the export side, more positive performance, both the year-on-year and the month-on-month figures being fairly positive. And on imports, though, slightly betrayed by the fact that imports is neutral on a month-on-month basis, but negative on a year-on-year basis. So those three elements of the BCI, we believe, would have to deliver consistent positive results for us to experience strong business confidence and strong economic prospects.
While we've got to focus on those elements of this index, we've seen some rebasing of the Business Confidence Index come through, and a new sub-index on the utility services has been introduced to this index, and that replacing a sub-indice on liquidation. So run us through the rationale there and what exactly we're looking at.
Sure. If I may take a step back first, the BCI is divided broadly into two elements, two broad components: the financial component, which is currently doing fairly well, and the real economy component. One of the challenges we've had in explaining the BCI, in addition to the various components that make it up, is what does the actual number mean? What does that index number mean? And the index number in the BCI is similar to the all-share index. The number has no meaning in itself. It only has meaning relative to movements month on month or year on year, and year on year being less reliable than month on month. So what we did was to make the BCI more relevant to current circumstances. We rebased it to 2010. Formerly, it was rebased to 2005, and 2005 tests the memory in terms of what was going on at that time. Now, the rebasing assists in us providing an indication of what a good BCI number is. And a good BCI number would be based on recent strong performance. So in 2006, we saw a level of around 120. So with the rebased BCI, that's the number we would like to see in the current economic environment. Now, we took a risk in that we could have created a lot of confusion, but the question of what would be a good BCI number was a very dominant question, and we couldn't easily answer it against a base of 2005. We can more readily answer it against a base of 2010, and that good number would be in the region of 120.
120. Let's go through these new components that you've introduced, though. I mean, the utility services index in particular, and why it's replaced the liquidations index.
Liquidations has always been a problematic component of the BCI. The number as released by Stats SA is subject to a number of influences. Most commonly cited is administrative difficulties. Sometimes you would find there's a fairly low number and then suddenly a huge number, and it's not explained by economic circumstances. So there was an administrative issue relating to that number. In addition, in terms of the future outlook relating to liquidations, it's expected that the business rescue provisions of the New Companies Act would impact that number dramatically and would possibly distort the reporting on liquidations. So that's a further reason why we decided to remove liquidations.
Okay.
The last reason is because liquidations correlates very strongly with some of the other factors in the BCI. So there was no loss from removing it, if I may speak loosely. We've decided to replace it with service delivery and retain the 13 components in order to minimize the complexity of the model. Service delivery, we believe, is key to the business environment and performance of the operational aspect of enterprises. And we found that it is becoming an issue that is increasingly correlated with business sentiment and with business performance, and of course also with the relationship between business and consumers. So broadly speaking, it was an opportune time to introduce this as a component.
Well, talking about components and factors that have become increasingly correlated with business confidence, nationalization and that debate. It's been gaining increasingly or gaining alarming momentum, if we can call it that. And, we seem to be seeing conflicting messages about, South Africa's commitment to doing business. How's the business community reading the messages at this stage?
Well, the business community would prefer that this debate didn't feature at all. As a point of departure. As a business organization, we felt it incumbent on us to have a discussion on the matter, and we took a risk again in the sense that we could have been seen as adding to the debate, but we believe that from an outside perspective it needed to be stated that some business organization in South Africa was taking a view on this, and that's how we positioned ourselves. So last week we held such a debate, and one of the clear themes that emerged from the debate was that nationalization is not an alternative to anything. It's not an economic policy consideration. It shouldn't even enter our minds in terms of the policy realm. But that being said, one can't ignore the reality of a debate that is raging on, the reality of a number of disparities within our society which have failed to be addressed to date.
Yeah.
And that's the reason why we find nationalization continuing to gain popular support to a degree. But the popular support stems from this notion not being properly thought through, the consequences of it not being thought through. And in some cases, or perhaps more often than not, the concept not being understood in terms of what it means for South Africa doing business with the rest of the world. Effectively, if we embark on such a path right now, we will be closing our doors to the rest of the world. That's an inevitable, inescapable conclusion that we've arrived at.